a mobile phone is imperative now. If you want to apply for a job, a mobile phone could be used to keep in contact with Centrelink and essential services. A mobile phone is like a mini computer in your pocket.
So tell me more about, I guess, your involvement with within the social enterprise space. Have you had much to do with any other, or had the opportunity to meet with any other founders?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been working within social enterprises in Australia since 2015.
Mm,
I was the communications manager for the Bower here in Sydney, and the Bower is quite a well-known social enterprise in Sydney. It was
yeah.
featured on the War on Waste because the Bower brought the concept of repair cafes to Australia back in 2014. And that's a community initiative where people come and get advice or assistance on repairing items with people who volunteer their time. So there's repair cafes popping up all over Australia. But our repair cafe at the Bower in Sydney was featured on the ABC doco series War on Waste with Craig Castle a couple of years ago. So I spent a lot of my time at the Bower. I set up a program called From House to Home, which then went on to win the community building program award at the New South Wales Office of Environment Awards in 2016, and was
Congratulations.
then, thank you, but it was then selected also to win the overall Premier's Award for Environment that year. And it's the same principle as to what I'm now doing with the Reconnect project. And House to Home was an initiative where I'd been helping some friends who were involved in the Mums for Refugees advocacy group. And I've been helping them drive around on hard rubbish days, collecting furniture and things that they could provide to families who were being released from detention in Villawood and being put into community housing, but had no way of accessing furniture and things. So I was helping them, and I thought to myself, this is nuts. I'm working for an organisation that has access to a truck, that has agreements with 21 councils to pick up furniture. We have these systems in place. All we need to be able to do is cover the costs of making it happen. And hence House to Home was born, and that program has expanded now to also support victims of domestic violence and homeless people that have been homeless and are transitioning into social housing or supported accommodation, and that works on the same principle. The Bower is donated masses of furniture, things that people don't need anymore. They work with caseworkers in different organisations to get that furniture then out to people, and those people get the dignity of choosing those furniture items. And that to me is a really important part when it comes to a social enterprise. Is there may be a primary objective for the social enterprise, but there's often subsidiary or side objectives as well. And for me, environmental work has been my driver, but I have a very strong sense of social justice, and I always have. I was the person who would chase the bullies down the street because they were throwing rocks at my neighbour, and I just can't handle seeing the injustices like that. So my mother said, yeah, I was always that way inclined. The kid I remember in kindergarten, and they said to us, oh, Christmas time, you bring a toy in for a child that doesn't have one, program. And I literally thought that you chose one of your own toys and you gave that to the school to give to another child. And my mum found me in my bedroom crying because I had a number of stuffed toys out in front of me, and I couldn't decide which one to choose to give away. But I really wanted to give one because the idea of there being a child that wasn't going to receive something at Christmas was quite upsetting. And my mum explained to me, oh, no, it's okay. We'll actually go and we'll get one from the shop, or we'll make something, or we'll do it that way. And so this strong sense of the haves and the have-nots, and the the divide in wealth around the world. I mean, that's a whole topic that we could go on for hours, but that's, I guess, the secondary driver for me is, well, one, I don't want to see stuff going to waste unnecessarily. Yeah. There's enough resources for us to continue reusing things. And two, why can't we help people that genuinely need help? I mean, for a refugee that arrives, and at the moment there's some legislation or things being put forward to stop refugees in detention having access to mobile phones, which I think is incredibly cruel, because how else are you supposed to contact family or friends? How else are you supposed to have a connection still to the world? And that, again, that's just it for me. A mobile phone, and you said in your intro, very excellent intro, a mobile phone is imperative now. If you want to apply for a job, a mobile phone could be used to keep in contact with Centrelink and essential services. A mobile phone is like a mini computer in your pocket. It can contain, a whole load of information and packages and programs and apps and things that mean that you don't necessarily need to have a full computer. So for someone who has been settled into Australia, has been released from detention, is put into community environment, what's the first thing you'd want to do if you were in that situation? Well, surely you'd want to contact your family and say, I'm safe, I'm okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And have a means of communicating with them. Yeah. And whilst we might love it, we might hate it, but they're here to stay. And mobile technology is just developing at such a fast rate. And whilst we keep adopting new technologies, which again, credit to what we're being able to do here today, it just leaves the trail it leaves behind. There's an opportunity there. So the first mobile phone that the Reconnect project gave to someone was a refugee who's in community detention up around the Hornsby area and in Sydney. That was the first one. And then the next 20 phones went to the women's community shelters. So with the rise of COVID and people seeing the increase in domestic violence and calls for help, if you're someone, fleeing a situation of family violence, you need a device or a way of communicating with people that isn't being tracked or traced by the abuser. And often when people flee those situations, they're walking out with nothing and can't be sure if their phone is actually safe to use.
Traumatizing, really, isn't it? I mean, my wife and I were watching a program a little while ago that I feel bad now because I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. Blake might know, he's pretty good with that sort of thing. But I'm sure it was probably an ABC thing, and it was just basically going into, maybe it was like riches to rags or something. Where
the homelessness one on SBS.
Yeah, homelessness. Yeah,
it's where they take people and they put them into living life as a homeless person for
different situations, like whether it was on the street or whether it was in a
boarding house,
which is still like terrifying. The boarding house was probably scarier. And now since I've tuned into that, I've heard somebody else telling a story about going to one of those boarding houses. Actually, no, it was Simon Fennick, who I interviewed. So I was originally running this show on Instagram Live, and I've just recently transitioned to doing YouTube and Facebook. But he basically got caught up in crime. Or he basically ended up turning to an ice addict and got caught up in crime and became a dealer, and like just the whole story of going right down the drain and then end up in jail. But then when he came out of jail, he said he'd turned up at a boarding house, and the person who was running the joint was off her face on something, and basically all the pointing to rooms down the thing, and it's like there's doors hanging out of the wall, and just you think, wow. But yeah, I remember we would watch that, and one of the scariest things in that was probably there was a mum and a couple of kids who they were actually in a house, but I think the house was they were going to have to leave the house. They were only able to be there for a while, but they had fled a domestic violence situation, and they were on the cusp of potentially ending up out on the street. And you think, well, that's just like it can't be that way, like, or the fact that it is that way, but like it shouldn't be, because it's bad enough if someone's trying to get out of such a horrible situation, let alone to think that they might be doing so to not know what's going to become of themselves. So that's a terrifying sort of scenario, or just a really
So within that divide between the have and the have-nots, there's also an increasing digital divide happening in Australia, and COVID has really highlighted that as well. That people and the digital divide talks in relation to a person's ability to connect digitally. So whether they have access to a device and whether they have access to a suitable internet. So the NBN rollout has been working towards reducing the access side of things, but then there's still the being able to have a device. And COVID has really highlighted that to people, because all of a sudden you had people trying to do schooling from home, and a number of kids, in families that just don't have the means to be able to buy a tablet or a laptop, for their kids to use. And at school it's provided, but in the home setting, not necessarily. So, in a backwards kind of way, COVID has shown how the importance of programs like the Reconnect project have in our society to be able to, keep people connected, particularly at times when we're being forced to isolate from other people. And then that leads into a whole range of mental health issues around isolation. And then at the end of that, when we're all coming back into society again, how's that all going to play out for people? So the online space and having the ability to access that is really important now. And certainly you're looking at situations, between Queensland and New South Wales where people aren't able to physically visit each other because of the border closure. Or if we didn't have, FaceTime apps and things, then how else would people be able to visually see? You can still pick up the phone. But now in some areas, landlines are on the decline. There needs to be suitable mobile coverage. Around Australia too. So there's a whole range of issues that can come into, understanding that divide digitally in Australia and how we can help with that. So I've actually had a number of businesses that have come together and done a little donation drive within their organisation. And people have gone through the drawers and the cupboards at home and brought in their spare laptops and tablets and phones, and these organisations have boxed them all up and sent them to us, and that's fabulous. I mean, that kind of support, the support actually I've received has been wonderful. People are really really positive, really encouraging about the Reconnect project. The questions that I get asked is, but what about my data? What's going to happen to that? And we use military grade software, specialist software that erases everything. We're not interested, not interested in accessing what people have got on their phone. So even if the phone is as beat up and broken as that one, it's still possible for us to repair it, completely wipe all the data, reset it, and then it's good to go. And I think that's the key distinction between reusing mobile phones and tablets to reusing laptops as well, because mobile phones and tablets all come with built-in software. So it's either the iOS or it's the Android operating system. Whereas laptops, once we completely erase that, well, then we need to be able to reinstall Windows or Apple operating systems onto Macs
Yeah.
and things, and that comes at a cost to us. So hence why we say around, again, back to that $100. It also covers the cost of providing a charger with the phone and things. But data security is really important, and we're not interested in what's actually on people's phones or tablets or laptops. We're just interested in
probably don't want to see who knows
who knows what you've got on there. I don't want to see your photos from your holidays or whatever. It's just it's not of interest to me. And so far, I'm doing some programs at the moment supported by the City of Sydney Council, and that's working with the YWCA in Sydney, the Women and Girls Emergency Centre in Redfern, and Counterpoint Community and Multicultural Services in Waterloo. And that's a 6-month program to provide up to 300 devices to people in the inner Sydney, quite low socioeconomic areas around Waterloo and Redfern and Alexandria. So we're getting laptops for girls who are participating in a mentorship program through the Women and Girls Emergency Centre, phones for people who are experiencing are in transitional housing and have no other way of being in contact with people, and devices to elderly isolated people within the social housing tenements in Waterloo, big housing estates in there. So that's a fantastic initiative, and so we need people to be donating their devices so that we can work with those organisations to get them out. And also, I've got a similar one happening in the Parramatta region in Western Sydney, supported by Parramatta Council, and that's working with Parramatta Mission and the Parramatta Women's Shelter to, again, get devices out to people who need them. But we've